Welcome back to the channel. We have a really exciting episode.
We talked to Melanie and Cory from NOTESTOSELF444 about all things. We intended just to talk about sister wives, but we ended up talking about polygamy, their experience in polygamy, how they got out of it. I thought it was a fantastic episode. We talked for like an hour and a half.
They even know the Browns.
Yeah, they grew up with the Browns. So we're going to get into the video quickly here, but remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want us to collaborate with them again, which we intend to do, leave a comment below. You are by far the most requested couple for us to collaborate with. People write us constantly.
Oh, that's awesome.
They love your content. Everybody is like, you have to talk to Notes to Self.
Oh,
so thank you
awesome.
for making time.
Of course.
Absolutely.
No, we love it. We appreciate people being interested.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, so you have to kind of give us some background about you. We've heard that you guys both came from polygamy.
Yep.
Yeah. So can you tell us your story?
So yeah, we were both born and raised in the AUB, the Apostolic United Brethren. Way back when the same guy, let's see, how do I go about this? The same guy converted my parents that converted Cory's parents.
Rulin' Allred.
Which is Christine Brown's grandpa. And so they're the same.
I didn't even know that was the connection. Christine Brown's, say that again, Christine Brown's grandpa was the person that converted Cody's parents?
Cory's parents.
And my Cory's. Oh, I thought you were talking Cody.
Well, and they always say that Christine Brown is like royalty in that church.
Yeah, dad's the one. Her grandpa's the one who started the AUB. Oh,
he was the first prophet at the AUB.
Right.
When the AUB split off of the other group, and it became the Allred group. AUB is a new term for it, but when we grew up, it was called the Allred group because Rulin Allred was the leader of that group. And so he's the one that brought my father and most of my mothers into it, taught her dad and their family and brought them into it. By the time Cody came into it, he had been killed. He was killed in 77, and Owen Allred, his brother, took over the group at that point. So
why was he killed? For polygamy?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was if you've ever watched the Daughters of a Cult, it was the LeBaron group. They were having arguments, and so they sent in over tithing where the tithing was going, because a lot of people were paying tithing into the Allred group, into theirs, and he felt like that they were the leaders of the group, and Rulin was taking some tithing. There's other stuff that went on in it, but Rulin had become the leader of about 10,000 people and was bringing more people in from the church. And so they sent two of their group members, ladies, and shot him in his doctor's office in Murray. Wow. So in 77.
So it is reflected on Big Love too. So you'll see a lot of on the Big Love when they come at the final season. That's a reflection of what that murder was.
Well, now I have to go back and see that because I have watched it, but I don't feel like I remember that part. Okay. It seems like that is not something God would have wanted, but
no. It was rivalry gangs or church groups. Church groups arguing over who should lead the whole group. And Rulin had started off on his own group, the Allred group, and I think LeBaron was trying to make a point to all these other little groups that they needed to follow the one true living prophet. And so he was making an example of it with Rulin and his brother. He was trying to kill his brother at the same time. And he knew if he got to Rulin, then his brother would show up to Rulin's funeral, and he had set it up to take out his brother at Rulin's funeral. So it's an interesting documentary. I grew up, I was 6 years old at the time, and my parents brought me down here to go to that funeral, but we stayed at my grandmother's house while my parents went to that funeral.
Wow.
my
and
gosh.
the cops were they had shown up to massacre his brother there, and there was too much of a police presence, and so they chickened out and left. So
Oh my God.
so
Yeah, you'll see all that
interesting
explained
stuff.
in Daughters of a Cult as
Yeah.
well.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I'll watch Daughters of a Cult.
Yeah, you like that.
Okay, so how long did you stay in the group?
So we were both born into it. And then I was married 8 days after I turned 17 and stayed married to that man for 10 years. And I left when I was 22. And then I went back when I was 24 and I stayed for almost 2 years. And then I left for good after that and got divorced from my ex-husband. And then, and I had 3 babies when I left and didn't graduate high school, had no education. I mean, I spent my senior year having babies. So,
Yeah.
and then my dad became one of the leaders when I was 19. And now my dad is the current prophet.
Oh my gosh. Can I ask a question before you move on?
Mhm.
So you got married after you were 17 into polygamy. So you had sister wives?
No, I actually didn't. My ex-husband and I courted and dated a few girls and we got really close, but we never actually did it.
Okay.
So she was the girl that he was really interested in. She was 16 when we started courting her. I was 18 and he was 26. And so, but then I ended up pregnant with my second child and just decided I just didn't want to do it right then. And she turned 17 during the process. And so it was, yeah. And it felt predatory to me. So, because she was so young, I was so young, and, you know, he was significantly older. And so we had courted another girl too, but I don't know. I just couldn't I couldn't agree to it and let it happen. He wasn't a very, what you would say righteous man by any means. So he had a lot of extracurricular activities on the side that made it pretty hard to trust anything that he says or does. And so it was really hard. You know, it's not an easy lifestyle. In fact, I was just telling Cory, you know, I've found a couple of videotapes that I had taped a couple of our dates. So, that we had, and I just look at my behavior and how I acted back then. And it's really scary and sad to watch how brainwashed I was at that time.
Yeah.
So how did you make it out? Like, you had to go against the tide to get out of that environment, right?
It was really hard because my grandmother joined the polygamous group and she had 11 children and all 11 of her children lived that way too. And so out of about 350 grandchildren, I was the first one to leave. And it was really hard. I was the first one to get married into polygamy and then leave. And so it was not an easy thing by any means. There was a lot of tears, a lot of, am I doing the right thing? You know, and then I had a baby at 24 and he was medical baby. And then my marriage was falling apart because of my husband's adulterous activities on the side. And I was just like, God's punishing me I know he always laughs whenever I call out. I try to say extracurricular activities, but let's just be honest, adulterous activities is what he was doing. And so I thought God was punishing me for leaving. And so I went back for a couple of years.
Oh.
And then I finally after about almost 2 years, I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this to my children. I can't, my daughter at this point. So she was 2 when I left, and I just saw an older man, like giving her these eyes that I was it made my
Creepy.
stomach churn. And so I was like, I can't do this to her. I can't make her live the same life. And so that's when I left the first time. It was finding the strength and just watching and imagining what her life was going to be like. And I just couldn't imagine that for her. And so that was why I left. And then I was like, oh shoot, God is punishing me. So I went back. And then after a while, I was just like, I can't do this to my children. And so I finally, I probably would have stayed for a lot longer than I did, but my ex-husband's activities were getting to the point where it was disrupting our daily lives. And I just couldn't. So when I left him, I left everything. So, and then I never legally got married. So I got a spiritual release from them. and then filed for a legal divorce to gain custody of my kids. But yeah, that was how I finally left. And children will do something for you when, I mean, it's hard to do stuff on our own, but children give you strength that you didn't know you had. So at least they did.
Yeah. I can't, I don't know what there's a principle. I don't know what the principle is, but there's something about when, if you're sort of dealing with 1,000 paper cuts, you will suffer for a long time. And it's sort of better to be stabbed because it's so egregious. You have to do something about it. So it's almost like the infidelity served you.
Yeah.
Because it helped as like something you had to deal with to get out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It definitely was a launching off point of just when I had to go get tested, for numerous STDs and stuff like that. And so when my baby was sick, and so they thought, he thought he had given me something. And that was what caused the illness in our baby. So that was really and even still, I didn't even leave right then. I mean, our baby was 6 weeks old and I still tried to work it out for another 18 months, almost 17 months after that. And then it just never got better and never got better. And the activity started to get more frequent and so then it was just, what am I doing? And so, and I was 25 years old when I finally just put it, but it took me 2 years to finally get a legal divorce and get a spiritual divorce, because those are not easy to get. And then it took me about 2 years to be finally broken away from it. And then Cory and I got married when I was 27 and you were 30. I think he was 30 and I was 27. So
how did your dad, isn't your dad's the prophet right now? Or how did he get?
Oh, he was really hard. He took it really hard the first time I left. It was really, really hard on him. And Cory was actually excommunicated and kicked out.
Yeah, I got the stab. So
Is it because you were a boy?
Well, yeah, I left when I had so many questions. And so I left when I was 18, but then kind of came back at 22, had a lot more questions. But then at a certain point, they were like, no, you're not welcome. Yeah, it was because I'm now a young man and it's better for me to go out. And their suggestion was that I go out into the church, the LDS church, and find, I guess, a wife and then work my way back in. But it really wasn't even to work your way back in. It's just like, you're out of here. So they excommunicated me and I was like, excellent, that one's wrong. And then I moved then I started to question, and I went into the LDS church for a little bit and realized it was the same platform, same everything. They just don't live polygamy. And so I started to, what do I believe now? And had to unravel literally 20 years of indoctrination. And I'm 53 now and I'm still unraveling it. So learning.
You're 54, by the way.
I am 54. Long time. So, but yeah, it's taken probably 34 years now and I still don't feel like that I'm still questioning a lot of stuff, which is great because this thing that I was raised to believe wholeheartedly turned out for me to be, that was indoctrination. That was falsehoods. What else am I being taught? And so I'm always in a learning environment trying to, okay, this is what I believe. Why do I believe that? Is it serving me? Is it helping me? And so I'm constantly questioning my, if you will, my belief to serve what best serves me and serves my family, my children, mankind. So
that's why he fans over you, because you come from the psychological perspective.
Yeah, I love to see what
exactly, because it's fascinating to us to understand the psychology behind why people do this. So when my dad was pretty upset when I started, Cory and I did not know each other while we were a part of the AUB. We knew of each other, but we were not, I mean, I had never like officially met him or been friends. We didn't really get to know each other till after we left. And my dad was really upset because Cory had been kicked out.
Mm.
And so,
Excommunicate.
yeah. And
Did
so
he
my
do
dad
the
was,
excommunication? Did your dad kick him out?
yeah, well, not
No,
it wasn't my dad at the time.
Oh.
He was the prophet at the time, but Cory did approach my dad and ask, hey, I want to date her. And my dad threatened him and was like, absolutely not. You know, she's got 3 small babies. She's just going to marry somebody
She'll
already
marry
in the AUB.
a worthy man within AUB. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
So,
and then I went against my dad and dated Cory anyways, and
anyhow.
eventually ended up marrying him. He didn't come to our wedding. He was pretty upset about it. It took him a long time. It wasn't until we had our first child together that my dad started to be nice to Cory.
And we had to make an agreement with each other when we were dating that neither of us wanted to ever be a part of the AUB again. So if we get married, there's no after the fact saying, I think we should go back, because then that's going to cause a separation, because neither of us at that point wanted to be a part of that cult group anymore.
Yeah.
So cult.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've watched a few of your videos, and one of the videos I saw, Melanie, you were talking about having taken a break on YouTube because you had gotten some feedback. I don't know who you had gotten feedback from, but somebody in your family or people were upset with you for doing YouTube and sharing your story. Do you both continue to encounter friction?
Yeah, it's not as prevalent as it was back then. People were stunned that I even started talking about it. And I probably would have kept going a little bit deeper, but my brother passed away. And so I kind of just took some time away from that. But yeah, it's hurt and offended a lot of people. And, but I would say 95% of the people that we know are more supportive. You only get that about 5-10% that are hell bent on making sure that people know you're wrong, or people know that you're a liar, or that what you're saying is not true, or it's an exaggeration. You know, my sister, what was funny, one of my sisters went into a store and ran into an old friend of, you know, an old acquaintance of mine. And she just went off on my sister about what a liar I was. And that she knew my ex-husband, that he was not that kind of a man, and all of these things. I'm like, wow, I don't remember having her in my home even one single time the entire 10 years I was married to this man. So people are very set in their convictions, and I understand that. And it's not our purpose to offend those people, but at the same time, there's truths to be spoken. And if they get offended, I mean, that's where they're coming from. It has nothing to do with what we say or do. And we really do try to speak as much truth as possible and still be as considerate as we can to the people that we still love, that are still a part of it. So it's a fine line all the time.
It is. I have 39 siblings that we grew up with, and
Wow,
I have
39 siblings.
Yeah, I have 34.
My dad had, so we grew up in a compound up in Pinesdale, Montana. My dad and 9 of his wives lived in, we called it the big house that had 7 wives in it, and then the cabin that had 2 wives in it and their kids. But we all ate together, we all worked together, and so 39 siblings. And I still have some siblings. Well, I have some siblings that are still part of the AUB, some that are part of the LDS Church, and then some that are Christians, and the majority of us that don't follow any religion, any
How
basis in
close
religion.
is the family dynamics to that of the sister wives? Like, was there like bickering between the wives, or did like sister wives and all that drama? And was there a favorite wife too?
Oh yeah. Every family has one. There's just no way.
Oh,
I
really?
mean, Cody, if it tells you anything, Cody and Mary spent a good portion of their honeymoon at Cory's house to learn from Cory's family on how to live polygamy.
In one house.
You knew them?
Yeah, we grew up with them.
With Cody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have so many questions.
I grew up with Christine and Mary. Mary and I still will chat ever so often. And then I met Cody the very first day he ever came out to the AUB. So yeah, we knew them growing up. They were in my wedding to my first husband. Cody and Mary were. And I was very close to Christine's family because Christine's grandpa is the one who converted my dad, and so her grandma was like my dad's surrogate mother type thing for being in polygamy. So I grew up at their house, and then two of my ex sister-in-laws married Christine's brothers. I mean, we're very intertwined. I went to high school with her. I shared a locker right next door to her. I mean, we were very, very intertwined in our relations. So yeah, we grew up with them.
Okay, wait, I have some questions.
I
have some questions about Mary. Okay,
Okay.
why? I'm digressing, but why does nobody talk to Mary in that family? What did she do? Because you're just like, oh, she was abusive, but like it had to be something more. Do you know?
Right. I think I'm a lot like Mary in personality wise. I think this is why I have such an affection towards her, is because I am in this religion, you don't speak your mind. If you do, everyone hates you. And if you say things, Mary's very direct. She's very, this is what I want done. And so that can seem extremely abusive to people who are not used to being asked, used to being told, these are my needs. And so, because you don't have your own individual needs in this religion, you have a collective need, and that's it. And so, yeah, right. And so I feel like that's where Mary can come off very abusive. And I mean,
we don't know the whole.
We don't know,
I didn't
because
know.
we weren't inside that family for so long. But
my interaction with some of the Browns was from my childhood. I left at 18, and right at that point, I guess that's when Cody. I only kind of learned that from my mom. I kind of checking back in and stuff. My little sister, who is on a lot of our lives in the comments, she remembers them coming up there and staying there. Our family was kind of, hey, if you guys want to learn how to live polygamy all in one house, go see them run it. And so, I shouldn't say mine, but go see how they run it. And so they would come up and see the dynamics, and we would put on the TLC show where everybody was
on their best behavior.
On best behavior when somebody was coming in to see it. But when the cameras were off, then there was the arguments and the fights and all of those fun things.
We
had some
pretty good fights.
Yeah.
Some of those. Yeah, you would be surprised at some of the fights that happen between sister wives. It's
like
intense.
Physical fights too sometimes?
Oh yeah. I've heard there's a lot of stories of women dragging each other down the stairs, and it's very, very physical, but you don't put that on TV. So that's not, and I'm not saying that happened in the Browns. Because truthfully, before the Browns went on TV, they were one of the most revered families in the group. We called it the group. They were one of the most revered families in the AUB. Everyone really.
They were living it right. They were living all in the same house. They were the perfect family to put on a show to see how well polygamy could go. And they were going on there. This is just my feeling because when a community hides itself or becomes secretive, predators, all sorts of not so nice people collect into into those groups because they're hidden from view. And so they were trying to bring out more of, hey, we're just normal people and stuff like that. And eventually they did get so that they're not prosecuting here in the state of Utah. I don't know where else. Mm-hmm. So that somebody can have a family like that. Because then if the kids feel like it's not so scary to tell if they're having a problem, call the cops or stuff. But we grew up you didn't call cops. I didn't even know growing up the way I did that you could call the cops. So if something was going on. So we were in pretty close society up there. We lived on a compound, a united order, where if you had a problem, you'd take it to your dad. If you had a problem, he would take it to the leadership. You didn't go outside. The world was scary. The cops, the government, all that was scary, and you stayed away from them. So you didn't tell anybody that you were a polygamous kid. So
It's the same compound that Robyn grew up on. So they live down the street from each other.
Oh,
yeah, I grew up in Pinesdale. Robyn's family was in the trailer court right down the road. I was friends with her. One of my best friends growing up was her brother from the other mother. And so, but yeah, so
Did you feel
I
like you
knew
got
that
enough
family.
parents? Did you feel like you got enough love with 39 kids?
To be honest,
we only had 34, so I just feel like
Yeah.
extra 5. That 34, I didn't feel that way at all. So
I felt like myself, I was one of the older ones.
I am too. Yeah.
So my dad really was affectionate to me when I was younger because he was proud of me. But then as kids came in, there's so many, it just got overwhelming. There were so many of us. But my dad did was married to 3 older women. We called them grandmothers. And so if I was hurt, if I need nurturing, I could go to the grandmothers, you know what I mean? But we got lost in you get lost in so many kids, so much that by the time I was a teenager, 10, 11, 12, we were out working the farms. So, and doing that, and then you come home and do schoolwork, you go work on the farm. And so I had more connection with my older brothers than I did with my dad at a certain age. And I built that connection as I became an adult with my dad. But I got some affection when I was young, missed him for 12.
The middle parts.
Yeah, middle part of the years. And then later on, in his older age, I created more of a relationship with him up until he passed. So
yeah.
It's really hard as someone who's on the outside of it, like watching Sister Wives, and then, I've just been there's been more media about polygamous families. And it's hard. I look at it and it feels so dysfunctional to me. And I'm like, I try to be really open-minded. Okay, well, it must work. I struggle with, I guess, 2 things. One, I feel like the fact that it is, and I don't know if this is polygamy or the LDS church, but it feels more hierarchical than other religions. And there's a little bit of a cultish piece to that also, but it feels like you're constantly trying to work up this ladder. And because of the hierarchy, some people's voices are louder than other people's voices. And there's this sort of like arduous journey to constantly be better so that you can get a higher rung on the ladder. And I think that leads to dysfunction. And then I feel like this thing where people are not fully engaged with the kids also leads to, like, I don't know how you would develop an identity if you don't have a stable parental. I mean, you may get nurturing, like physical nurturing when you need it, but I don't know how your identity evolves when it's the nurturing so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've really worked on that with our children, where we have really tried to develop that relationship with our own children, because we didn't have that.
We missed that.
Yeah. And so we've done when I became pregnant at 17 is when I started doing parenting books and parenting classes, because I knew no matter what, even if I was still in the religion, I knew the way that I was raised didn't serve it didn't help me develop who I was. And so it was the women around me, or, I didn't have any sort of healthy masculine energy around me at all. And so I already knew that I wanted to heal that or change that at 17. I spent a lot of time in the library reading books on parenting. And so we've really tried to shift that with our children, so that we're not having such a gap there in connection and relationships. And there's just no way to have it. Cory's mom was the second wife. My mom was the second wife. We're both the first children to be born as polygamous children in each one of our families. And it is, it is very, and especially when you get that favorite wife. Now in Cory's family, it was a little different because they all lived in the same home, or they lived on the same property. where, you know, my dad had that favorite wife and was gone most of my childhood. He would come home one night a week. You know, I grew up mostly with 3 moms, and then the 4th mom came in when I was 14 or 15. And so, and then he didn't get another wife again until I was 20, 21 or something like that. And so but I still never saw my dad for only having 3 wives, because he was always at the favorite wife's house all the time. And so, yeah, there's just such a huge disconnect. These boys don't learn to become men from their fathers. They learn it, whatever they have, you know, and my mom was always working 2 or 3 jobs. She was gone all the time. I was the one who raised children.
Yeah.
And so that made it really hard where they have more of a community setting, because they all lived on the same compound together. And they all had that ability, where we lived in the suburbs and each wife had their own home, and we lived across town from each other. We didn't even live next to each other at all. And we would get together on Sundays for family dinner and church and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's you have children raising children is what you have in a society like that.
And that's where I'm curious. What I'm trying to always listen to what you're saying about the psychology part of it, because I don't feel like that I was raised up with a healthy view of parenting. It was an authoritative. You did what you were told to do type thing. There were some moments that I had connection with some of the mothers, and when I was younger, a dad, but I was scared when I became an adult to be a father. I didn't want to be a father like my dad was. And so it took a lot of time and us communicating on, okay, if we're going to raise children, because she had 3 from a previous marriage, but I was worried about having my own children. I didn't want to mess them up. I felt messed up myself, if you will. And so then I started to learn about parenting. I took some parenting classes. And okay, I'm not going to be the father figure that I had. I'm going to sit down and communicate with them and have this conversation with my kids growing up. And knock on wood, I hope we did good. I think we got 5 amazing human beings that are free thinkers. And so I'm appreciative of that, especially knowing the way I was raised. So, and I did, every time that it came up, it's like almost to the point where it was like, okay, this is a parenting decision I have to have. How did my parents handle this? I'm going to do the opposite this time. And so, But it does slip into your everyday life. I mean, here it's still, no matter how much healing we've done or what we've done, you know, we still ended up divorced for a couple of years. Some of that stuff creeps back in, and we ended up divorced. We were divorced in 2016, and we didn't get remarried until 2018.
Oh, the 2 of you were married, divorced, and then married again?
Yeah. And a lot of that is attributed to some of the mentality that we were taught growing up. And we let a lot of that creep into our relationship because we became unconscious. We just got comfortable and became unconscious to the point where our relationship suffered to where we ended up divorced for 2 years. And when we came back together, we had a lot of conscious conversations of, okay, this is what we need to do moving forward in order for some of those programmings to not creep back into what we're doing, you know.
We grew up in a society where we wanted to be better parents than we had, I felt like. But we had neither of us have ever watched what a healthy marriage looks like. Never did. And so when it came to our divorce, we went through marriage counseling. It's interesting because within the community, you don't go and ask for help from outside of the community. Well, if you don't ask for help from a monogamist, that was against the
if you have one toxic person giving advice to another person, you know what I mean? There's just no way to break that cycle.
And so we stepped outside of our religious upbringing and got medical advice, or Gentile advice, and worked on healing our relationship and learning how to be monogamous. So
And it hasn't been easy. Like, so we've been remarried now for almost 7 years, and it's not been an easy 7 years. It's been,
but we have conversations
a lot
that
of
we
work.
never had in our first marriage. So
Right.
we talk to each other. We have healthy conversations. So
yeah.
I think it's amazing. I hope you give yourselves credit for changing the cycle. You know, I mean, that's like the $1 million question always is, there are a lot of people that grow up in really caustic environments, and some people get stuck in that environment kind of at no fault of their own. That's the environment that they're in. And there are other people that find ways to get out of that environment. And it's like, that is no simple feat. So the fact that you've both of you got out on your own, found each other, and then, I mean, it's a lot of work to like decide what you want your relationship to look like versus being able to just mimic whatever your parents did. You know, that's
Right. Yeah. And we got remarried right before our oldest got married. And we didn't tell anybody. We just went and did it because we didn't want to overshadow their wedding. And we just decided we were just going to do that because we wanted that energy
help
in our, we wanted our kids to see that we were unified again before they went into their marriages. And so we did that just a couple of days before our oldest got married. And then we pulled them all aside and just told them quietly. So I don't even think anyone at their wedding knew that we were married again. And so, because we wanted to start emulating that, hey, yes, we've gone through some stuff and we're on a healing and we've made this decision to stay committed. So it's been a lot of work for the last couple of years. But it's been absolutely worth it. We have 4 grandchildren now, and having that opportunity to raise those babies together. And we're very hands-on grandparents. They're at our home a lot. And it's funny because I felt that overwhelming responsibility when I had my first child at 17. How do I become a better mother? Well, having grandchildren is a whole different level of feeling responsible. How do I show them what a healthy, functioning person and marriage and relationships look like? So that is our primary focus, I would say, of our entire lives for the last 7 or 8 years is relationships. So,
Wow.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask a question about just like a little bit of a pivot, but not like, it seemed like you felt like you were kind of brainwashed. And I think you used that term, that you were brainwashed. Did you use that? Okay. And I was just thinking about Kevin Franke and how like brainwashed he was, and how he still it was so obvious to all of us but how could someone with a PhD be so brainwashed to think like that woman was actually respectable, even though, and I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with a dopamine hit, to be totally honest. Somebody tells you something, when we just watched this documentary and Kevin was struggling with his mom in this documentary, and then someone comes in and validates him and he gets that little bit of a dopamine hit of he's validated. Now she's gained credibility in his eyes. And then it's the next step and it's the next step and it's the next step. I feel like that's how does Kevin have a PhD? Is that what you?
Kevin's the dad. Kevin's the dad. Chad is the kid.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the child. Okay. My mind is still blown at that. I'm sorry. I got the son and the father mixed up. We said the same thing. Like, how on earth can you do these things? But all 4 of our parents, mother, father, were converted. And so that's where we don't understand, because we were born and raised in this kind of a culture. And so that's where it's a little bit harder for us to understand that, because we didn't have to come in fully converted. We were converted from birth, and we had to do the unbreaking. So I don't understand that. That's a very, I think it goes right along with the principles in the LDS church, is very similar foundational of shame and guilt. And you function from shame and guilt most of your life. And so you almost don't know how to function out of shame and guilt, because it's not familiar. And so when somebody like Jody comes in and starts, and this, I'm not a therapist by any means. This is just my, what I've seen. When she comes in and starts functioning from shame and guilt, that's familiar to him.
Mhm.
And
That's the
so
way we were raised.
that's how he finds validity in what she's saying, because
Mhm.
she's dabbling in a familiar area of shame and guilt. And so, and he's already got the shame and guilt from his behavior. I don't know if you followed outside of the documentary. There was another documentary where she was shaming men for pornography addictions or sexual
Mhm.
addictions. And so he was seeing her for that. And so when you've already got that going on, that's easy for somebody to control someone who already is living in the shame of what they perceive to be such a horrific act. So in my opinion, I don't know.
Yeah. And
You're
so
the psychologist.
I don't know. So from my point of view, we were raised from birth that we should listen to our leaders, that, and in this case, he's listening to his wife and somebody that he holds up as a leader who knows. And you
she
should,
came recommended by the LDS Church.
yeah. And so you should believe them, and you shouldn't believe the police. They're going to twist stuff. You shouldn't believe outsiders. They're going to twist it. They have been turned over to the buffetings of Satan. Satan is tricky in his verbiage. And it isn't until he actually sees those children with his eyes, then all of a sudden he's stunned, because he has never believed that she would devolve to who she's become.
Yeah.
And even when he sees it with his eyes, he's still got that doubt in his mind that these guys are tricking him in some way. And it takes those are the things that wake you up from, I've been in this cult for years. I feel bad. Mel goes through, just like you said, the 1,000 cuts. She's going to do this because the belief system says you have to go through trials and tribulations to purify yourself. You know what I mean? I got the stab, which just, you're out. You don't get a great. That was such an amazing, I look back at it now as a blessing that basically they took all that stuff that they stuffed into my brain of how I should believe, and then they basically took it away and say, you're going to hell. You're turning over to the buffetings of Satan. And I'm like, great, I'm out here.
Well, he didn't say great. It was very traumatic.
It
on
was
the entire
traumatic, but
it was very traumatic, and it still is. His mom
Yeah.
still has a hard time talking about it without crying and getting emotional.
but it's what I needed at that time to
Right.
break myself from the trance that I'd grown up in.
Right?
Yeah.
Apparently, is his name Kevin, needed to see his kids abused and almost dead. So,
Yeah.
and that's shocking. That's sad. There are so many people within these groups that have that blind faith in the leadership, in the hierarchy of this, that they would do no harm, they would do no wrong, and they still believe it today. And I love my family that's in there, but I see the harm that has come from the way we grew up, the harm to the kids. I have done thousands of hours of therapy trying to change some of the belief systems that I have, to open my mind up to other possibilities and to rebuild my faith that was basically crumbled to nothing because I was taught one way, excommunicated. Now I have to build up on my own faith. So my own learning, my own understanding. And yeah, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so glad it did. It
took about 10 years for you to be grateful that it did.
Yeah, as a
Yeah.
young man, I was devastated. Everything that they told me that I needed to do to get into heaven, and then they went, nope, and you are unworthy of that. So see ya. Go out into the world, and we turn you over to the buffetings of Satan. Enjoy the rest of your miserable life. So
Jeez. For the two of you, I'm thinking about your channel. Is the notes, like, how did YouTube start for you? It feels like when I hear you talk about it, it's got to be a very therapeutic thing. I mean, you're processing your upbringing, your faith. Is that what's the mission of the channel?
Well, when I first started, our kids have told us for years, you guys need to start talking about this. And we always thought, yeah, nobody's going to care about this. Like, why does anyone care? And then just a lot of, so much. Basically my boys said that to me. They're like, Mom, this would be very therapeutic for you to start this. When we were divorced, I've had a couple of different and, trying to end my life experiences. And I was very much at that place when we got divorced. And so my boys were constantly trying to, what can Mom do to, how does she have an outlet to get rid of some of this trauma? And so they begged me for years. And I finally just sat down one day and made a video and went, okay, let's see where this goes. And I named it Notes to Self because as a child, I would literally make physical notes and I'd put them around my house about the different women that I would see in the polygamous group, because you always had your different, you had your selfish ones that took everything. You had your givers that took everything. And I thought there was weaknesses in both. And so I would try to write these little notes down, and then 444 is the transformation or manifestation number. And so I just sat down and decided to start talking about it. And it was scary. I mean, I watched my very first video that I ever did, and I was like terrified to even publish it. But our kids, because we kept our kids so far away from it, when we tell our experiences with some humor or with but my kids are like, yeah, that's not funny. Like, that's serious, because they're not realize, you know what I mean? For them, it's so foreign. My oldest didn't even realize my dad was a polygamist until he was like 12. And so yeah, that's kind of where it started, was how do we go through these things that should literally take us down and take us apart and end our lives here, and how do we build those back up? And I was never going to talk about sister wives. I had no intention of that. That never even crossed my mind. And then I was just my kids finally talked to me, and really it's our kids who have pushed us to do a lot of this. And then finally my kids were like, you need to get on TikTok and do more short form content, and pick a little subject and do it, and then do a video or something like that. So I started to do that, and then just got picked up on TikTok, and people started noticing it. And then we just decided to go live one night, and people just asked us a million questions about, there's a couple of ex-AUB members that have TikToks, and they were the ones who reached out to me and said, Melanie, you need to start talking about this, because this is what people are familiar with. And so I didn't think that I would ever get Cory to talk with me. Like I've always been very open about it, because I didn't choose this way. I was just born this way. I can't make that distinction, where Cory's always been extremely secretive about it. He doesn't want to talk about it publicly. So, it just kind of evolved from there. I made one video, it went viral. And then I made another video and it went viral. And so then we just kind of started, that's where it kind of started and escalated. So now we have done a lot of content on sister wives, a lot of live Q&As that people have asked us. And then we tried to do one video recently of the two of us, and Cory was like, deer in the headlights, look like he's like, I don't know if I can do this. I can talk about other people. Yeah. And it's not even talking about other people. It's
like the dogma. I can talk about the dogma, but when I'm talking about my own personal life, my mom's still a part of it.
Yeah.
And so I want to explain how I grew up, things like that, with some respect, because my mom's watching some of this stuff. And I've had lots of conversations with her. I had lots of conversations with my dad before he passed too, as I was going through therapy and things like that. And so I've healed a lot of stuff with my parents growing up. I've got a good relationship with them.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
And so, but their main belief system, stuff that they still believe in this day, I have no respect for. I feel like it's damaging. And so I love them to death. I do. I love my parents, but I don't want my kids being raised that way. My grandkids, I love that they've all stayed away from the AUB. So, but I don't want to say too much. So when she's like, hey, let's talk about this experience in your life. I don't know how much to say. I don't know where to go. I'll try to talk to it about the humor part of it, some of the stuff that we grew up in humor wise, but some of the stuff I've done a lot of therapy for on the way I was raised. So
Well, and for me, my dad became a leader in the AUB when I was 19. He's always been a leader, but he became one of the 12 apostles when I was 19 years old. And so I kind of dealt with that realization or that trauma back then. Well, my dad only became the prophet 3 years ago. So my younger siblings are now just starting to deal with that. Like, what the hell is happening here? And so it was like one of those that literally shook their entire worlds. And so some of my siblings have gone out and gone public about it. And I feel they were misrepresented. And I feel like the truth is already hard enough. You don't need to lie about it or sensationalize it.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were, very misrepresented, which really lit a fire under my behind and made me go, okay, I think, and I made a video about it. I was so angry about it. I made the video and I put it on just my Facebook page and it got thousands of views.
Oh, wow.
And so then, and my sister was angry with me at first, like, she was upset because I said, this particular creator takes these victims of this situation and she re-victimizes them and tries to tell the story in a way that comes out very victimizing. And so my sister and I were, we kind of had a little bit of a falling out for a while. And then I just went in my video. I was so enraged. I was just like, I don't know, maybe you're going to see me start my own channel so that these things can be told in accuracy. They're so horrific already. They don't need to be sensationalized. And so that's really what lit that, because my kids have been telling us for years, but that's what got me started, was just doing that. And now my sister's been coming on to my lives and, she wants to do a couple videos. And so, yeah, well, we're getting there. And I just felt like, how do I support my younger siblings in this world shaking event that our dad now became the leader of something that I've experienced and went through at 19, how do I turn around and help them through it too? So, and it has been.
Sorry, I have to run. I got to pick up the kids.
no, yeah.
So you can keep talking to them if you want. Can I just say really quick? It is so nice to meet you and to talk with you. I am so impressed with what you've done. Just forget YouTube, but impressed with like the arc of your stories. And thank you for joining us. And your YouTube channel is fantastic. And in whatever way we can be supportive, we will be.
And
Okay.
I have one question before he goes.
We should definitely do it again because we were going to talk about sister wives and we haven't.
forgot.
We need to meet again.
Okay, you go get the kids so we're not late. But I just wanted to ask, like, how do you become a prophet?
It's just succession. So it's supposed to be whoever's next in line. And so my dad the last prophet died and my dad happened to be next in line. And so some of the leaders jump and they don't follow succession, which is how the AUB got started. One of the prophets jumped and didn't, call the people who were supposed to come next. So that's why there was that whole feud with the LeBarons, because it should have gone in a succession and it didn't. Yeah. And that prophet jumped. Joseph Musser was the prophet at the time. And he jumped and called Rulin Allred instead of the two guys that were in front of Rulin.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And it's really just whoever's the most senior of the 12 apostles is supposed to go next.
Okay. So, and then have you seen Keep Sweet or whatever?
It's probably a documentary.
I feel like, it's about like they all wear the same outfits and the same hair braids.
Yeah. FLDS.
Is that AUB though?
No.
That's FLDS.
Yeah. So the AUB and the FLDS used to be one church. And then kind of the same thing. Succession, somebody was appointed the next prophet and it wasn't them. So that's kind of how they split. Well, and so it literally split families in half.
Yeah.
And half of them went to FLDS. The other half went to the AUB. And no, that wasn't a thing. Like they dressed like regular people for the longest time. It wasn't until Warren Jeffs came in and it was a way to control the masses, was to make them dress the same, look the same, act the same, hair the same. And I remember being young and my dad they were all talking about how they kept telling Warren Jeffs and FLDS that they had to back off child brides. They had to back off, like that they were just getting too too much of a dictatorship. And so yeah, that's kind of what happened with that.
Yeah. I think they basically, the different leaderships. Owen came in after Rulin and he wanted to be more of a community that could blend in and try to look normal. Like, we're just normal families, just like the Mormons and stuff like that. We just believe in having kids and wives, where the FLDS wanted more control over their people, but the AUB did the same thing. They'd kick out people that were young men. They'd kick them out of their communities. They do the same thing. They just did it under the guise of, we look more normal. And so that's one of the things we discussed. We would be like, oh, we're part of the AUB. I'm just glad we're not as bad as the FLDS or the LeBaron group or the Kingstons. We're the better group that is blending in more.
We're not as crazy as those guys.
It's crazy, but we had the same, all the same belief systems, all the same controls, all the same everything. We just, okay, we're not going to marry them at 14. We're going to make sure they turn 18 or 17 and stuff like that. So, but when I was younger, they had the same problems as the FLDS. So, and probably still do. I haven't been around for 30 years or 35 years, 34 years now. So,
yeah.
You weren't homeschooled? You guys went to normal school?
Cory was homeschooled. I went to public school.
Yeah.
If I did go to school, a lot of times I didn't go to school because I was helping with kids.
So, like in the Browns, I was at a community school from kindergarten till 8th grade. And then our family put together what was called the Pines High School. And so I finished out the high school, but I got a certificate just like I was graduating, but it was from Sunshine Studies. And then I had to go take the GED equivalent. But yeah, I went through the community school up there in Pinesdale from kindergarten to high school, then got my GED and graduated. So I guess but it was all under priesthood schooling. We studied mostly doctrine, stuff like that. We had some of the AUBs and ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but most of it was indoctrination school. So I knew a lot about how we came about and things like that. The history of AUB instead of the history of the USA. So,
do you think that they kicked you out, and like a lot of the young men were kicked out because they were threats to the other men or women?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got in that society, you have so many young men growing up. It's suggested as a young man to go out into the world, if you will, or into the church and get that first wife and then convert her and come back into the faith, you know what I mean? And then raise a family up at that point. But you as a young man weren't readily welcome to date other people within there. A lot of the girls that were in my graduating class were all engaged to men within the group that already had a wife or two, and they were excited about it. That's how they were trained. They wanted to be if they married a young man their same age, they'd be a first wife. Like Christine said, I wanted to be a third wife. Those are the if you will, brainwashings. And so they were looking for older men that already had established. And so a lot of the women would marry older men within the group, and we were sent out. So it's not only brainwashing, I think, with the males of it, but also the females, that you want to marry somebody who has an established family and already looks like a good, righteous man within the group. So
is there a lot of inbreeding?
Yes. And I mean, yes and yes.
Why is it? I mean, it just seems like it would be, but
there is, I mean, yes, there is. And there's not as much now as there was back then. but
Mhm.
it's definitely not to the extent of the Kingstons. But it's not, I wouldn't say that people aren't marrying their second cousins, because they probably are. And so, but it's not necessarily, you know, a sister marrying an uncle. Although I have very much seen a lot of that kind of stuff happen in the AUB. That's a little bit more frowned upon, but it does happen. Yes, a lot. And that's one thing that I have been so grateful for is some of my sisters, my mom had 7 girls, and none of them are like, we're not marrying in Utah. We have to marry outside of Utah because we're going to be related to these people. We're not going to know. And so, but you know, my parents, both my mom and dad, and both Cory's mom and dad, were both married in, or were both converted in. So we're not related blood to anyone, which has been kind of nice. And so with my ex-husband, both of his parents were converted in, so they're not related by blood to anyone. So I keep telling my children, no, you're not inbred. I swear.
We're what would they call it in Harry Potter? Mugworts or something like that. Yes. So the interesting part is when, Christine's family's royalty. Well, the reason there's a royal bloodline, there's these families that have been a part of the Mormon experience since the beginning. Those are royal bloodlines. Those are what the young girls want to be married into, those royal bloodlines. This is all speculation, but if you're a royal,
I don't think there's really much royalty about it.
You're probably got some inbreeding in the family tree.
Right.
Those of us that were converted in were first generation in there. Yeah, we're not marrying our cousins. We're not. And there were a lot of people that they brought in the 70s, probably to delude some of the bloodline.
Spread out just a little bit.
Okay, I know you have to go, but I just wanted to ask about Cody Brown. Was he cool like they portrayed him at the beginning? Or was he always kind of like nasty as he is? Sorry, there's text messages happening. Okay.
No, you're good. And we could definitely schedule another time. We're pretty open in the evenings. Any time for us is pretty good. But yeah, I met Cody the very first night he came to the AUB, and this goes back to what we were just talking about. He was new blood. He was new, and he was funny, and he was like, he would chat all the time, and he had these blue eyes, this blonde hair. Like, he was definitely, I wouldn't say that he was cool per se. I think he's always thought he was more cool than he was in real life, but he was definitely more desirable because he was, everyone else there's a humbleness or you know, you don't talk very loud. You're not very boisterous. You try to keep yourself controlled and confined in your emotions. And he just came in there not realizing that. So he's just like, oh my gosh, let's all be friends. Let's blah, blah, blah. And so I think that was some of the attraction. My sister, I have a sister who's 4 months older than me, and she was 100% going to marry him because she was just like, he is so cute. And then I was like, and I just thought he was arrogant, and I had zero attraction to him. And so I was like, please don't do that. That would be horrible. And so, and then him and Mary just kind of fit because Mary was always more outspoken than some of the other people were too. And so, yeah, he always was trying to be funny. He's always trying to be the center of attention, always trying to be, you know, look at me. He's a look at me boy. And so I don't think he was cool per se, and at least not in my perception, he wasn't. But I wouldn't say that he was uncool either. Yeah. He was cooler than what the pick of the litter was. You know?
Yeah. Well, he says now he says that he never loved Mary, but you knew them back then. Is that a lie?
That's such a load of crap. Yeah, they came to my house for a Halloween party once when they were just, nobody really knew they were a couple, and they kind of came out, and they were very much in love. He was very much in love with her. I don't know. He's unrecognizable now from the man that I remember. And I don't know anyone who isn't disgusted and sickened by him. And the way that he talks now and the way he presents himself now, it's very sad. It's very disheartening because this is not the man that I remember growing up at all. And I don't know if he does it because it's an ego thing where he doesn't want to look like he lost because 3 of his wives left him.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's more ego based on what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
Somebody said to me that because I was leaving the AUB and then they excommunicated me, you can't quit, we're firing you. I feel like he has some of that same mentality when you got, how can you leave?
You women can't leave me.
You
I
can't
didn't want
leave.
you anyways.
Yeah, I wasn't that in love with you. You were more in love with me than I was in love with you. So why would you ever leave me? It's hit his ego hard. He is devastated, and the way he does that is lash out at them. Oh, I never loved you anyhow. So
I know. And his wives are so cool. Like Mary, I always think Mary, Christine, and Janelle are like super cool. And I always honestly, when I watch the show, I was like, oh my gosh, how did this guy get all these really cool women? You know, like Christine is so funny and fun all the time. So I feel like he really did. He's having narcissistic injury. That's what David would say.
That's exactly what it is. And it's really sad to watch because he doesn't have to handle it this way. And he's choosing to like Christine has always been hilarious my entire life. She's always been the life of the party, but not in the way that Cody was. Cody was life of the party because it was like, look at me. Where Christine was the life of the party, just having a good time. She didn't need everybody to look at her. Although she mortified me and embarrassed me a couple times in high school because my sister, I have a sister who's 4 hours older than me, and we all lockered right next to each other. And my sister is very much the same way as Christine. And those two were so rowdy and rambunctious in the hallways, and I was not. I was just like very quiet, did what I was told. And I'm like, you two are so embarrassing. I just didn't even want to know them at all. I was just like, you're in high school going, let's not pretend you don't know me. But yeah, they were very much. And so Christine doesn't do it for the attention seeker the way that Cody does it for the attention.
Yeah.
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 And I mostly discuss it with Cody just because I feel like me growing up in polygamy, I'm seeing the way that because his kids are frustrated and trying to communicate with him about behaviors that him and his current wife have, he's willing to push them away, ignore them. And so I see that damage. That is one of the things TLC and Sister Wives are showing is the damage that can happen for these kids.
Well, it is so sad. I mean,
you always want to impress and please that father, even when he's ignoring and
I mean, I think it's crazy how deferential Robyn is to him. Like I don't know if she's manipulative or just so insecure and basically lame. I can't figure it out. Like, does she manipulate on behalf of him or is she manipulative in general? I don't know.
All of the above.
Or do you use all of the above? What's your take on her? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I speak more kindly of her than Cory does because Cory grew up around her. And so,
oh my gosh, I forgot. Yes.
Yeah. So Cory knew her growing up more than I did.
I knew her when she was young, and so most of my frustration is because I knew her mom growing up, and her mom I knew the family that was created before her mom came into it. And I'm still friends with the family that was there. And I have lots of respect for her stepdad. And because I enjoyed hanging around with that family. I hung around with that family, and I hung around with that family when she came in. Her mother came into that family and saw what she did, and how she manipulated to become the wife that she was.
Yeah.
And I just see the same playbook and so most of my frustration towards Robyn is because I grew up with her mom. So I knew her mom. She was older but I was a teenager when her mom was coming into the family. So I don't know Robyn. I haven't, she was a little she's younger than me. She was a little kid, but I see the same playbook that her mother played on, and it's typical within polygamous families. Every one of them does it. And so my frustration towards
already, huh?
my frustration towards Robyn is nothing towards Robyn. It's completely all my frustration watching her mother do to that family.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and the families around.
I've done a couple videos on the different types of women in polygamy, and Robyn's just another type.
She's just
Every
a type,
family
yeah.
has one, unfortunately. It just really, I don't blame Robyn for the destruction of the Browns. I blame Cody for the destruction of the Browns. It's just definitely, it depends on how the man handles that woman, and every family has one. Hell, my dad's got 2 of them. It's so hard to deal with.
And Robyn was trained from birth just like that too. And
Right.
she's living and acting exactly the way she was trained from birth to live and act. So,
and my mom was more of the Janelle, and my mom, you know, was more of and the favorite wife just came in and wreaked havoc. And when that wife came in, the first wife left. She was like, I'm not putting up with this. And I was probably almost 3 when she left. So Robyn's not, she's not an exception to the rule. Unfortunately, she is that
typical wife.
In every single polygamous family has one. I don't know one single family that doesn't have one. And so, so I think it just depends on how that man handles that situation. So, and so it's funny, I was watching a little clip today, and Cody was like, I was absolutely fair and equitable with my time. I can guarantee you he was not, because, you know, that's what we've experienced too.
He might have with the original 3, but it definitely failed after he brought Robyn into it. So,
yeah. So no, it's definitely not an exception to any means. So Cody just handled it. He just failed. He's the one who failed the family, not necessarily Robyn. Because it's his job to lead. It's his job to direct. It's his job. I mean, he's got one job and he screwed it up. So
he fell in love.
Found
Found his soulmate. So
yeah,
it's so obnoxious. So do you drink in the AUB?
No,
but Cody's family does.
It's very much against the word of wisdom. So the LDS Church has what's called the word of wisdom, where they, you know, live by all these different rules, and alcohol is not allowed. Coffee's not allowed, that kind of stuff. A lot of people do it anyways. They just, I guarantee you they did not drink until and we haven't watched about 90% of the show. We've only ever watched season 1 and now season 19. Those are really the only seasons we've ever watched. Most people we know don't watch the show because it's not real. And they do their best to portray as well as they can, but so much of it would never happen in a normal polygamous family if they weren't on television. And so we don't know at what point they left the AUB or they stopped. You know, we kind of measure that by them stopping to wear their garments.
Yeah, we're rewatching. So we're on season 2 now. I started watching. She was playing it. Oh, hey, the Browns are on. I'm like, oh, cool. And then at the end of the episode 1, introducing the new wife, and I'm like, oh, they're in trouble. And then I quit watching. I was just like, oh man, that's going to be a nightmare. And so I quit watching, and these guys all kind of watch, but it wasn't
1, and then we didn't watch past season 1. Just whatever clips you see on social media.
Now I'm going back and rewatching a lot of the stuff. We would watch the end of the season where they would all talk on, because I felt like that was more interesting, them communicating and seeing what they're doing. But yeah, I had instant disdain for the show. As soon as I saw Robyn come on screen, I'm like, I'm not watching this crap.
But what's hilarious is that both of our mothers, for the first time, I mean, we've been together 25 years, right? First time ever, both of our mothers are down here for Thanksgiving at the same time. And my mom has recently left my dad, and then Cory's dad has passed. So they're both here. We've got these 2 little old ladies sitting on our couch in their little blankets, watching Sister Wives. And both of these women have been in polygamy over 50 years of their lives, right? And they're both like yelling at the TV at Robyn. Who does this girl think she is? And they're both. And I was like, you guys need to say nice words, because I can't post this on social media because you guys are talking. And so it's hilarious because they are just these little old ladies going, who does this woman think she is? She doesn't know anything about living polygamy. She doesn't know anything about like the self-sacrificing. So it was really cute to watch
them give their opinion on, because to be honest, I've lived in a polygamous family as a child. I've never lived it as an adult, never would. The way I grew up, I was like, I will never be a polygamist. I was so frustrated. I wanted to be able to know my kids, know their names, and just so if I was even going to have kids. So yeah, so it's interesting to hear it from both of these mothers' perspective who have lived it as the wives, and how they would have reacted with Robyn or the different wives. So
Why'd your mom finally leave after 50 years?
Because my parents are just dumb, but no, it's because we always lived separately we didn't live in the same home. And then my dad bought, I always call it a compound too, but my dad bought a fourplex and put his wives in the fourplex. And this happened back in like 2016. And that favorite wife is always dominating all of the time. Well, now they're all around each other and they can see it. It's easy when it's out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. But now that you're on the same property, my mom's like, it's not a compound, Melanie, it's a complex. I'm like, it's a complexing compound, Mom. That's what you guys created. And so when you can look out your kitchen window and you see that 90% of his time is spent with the one dominating wife, well, finally there was one moment too much that broke the camel's back. And my mom was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And so she took a huge step back, and because my dad was sacrificed, he was supposed to be with her that night. She was waiting and waiting and waiting. And he lied to her, flat out lied to her and said, sorry, I'm stuck at this place. And then he pulls into the driveway with the favorite wife, gets out, and then comes to my mom's house. And that was just one of the things that just like broke that
was a pattern over 50 years.
And it's one thing when he can pull up into the driveway and it's just him. But when he's pulling up in with the other wife, and then she gets out, goes into her house, and he finally gets to so when Christine and Janelle say, yeah, he didn't come to our house till 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then he was leaving first thing in the morning. That's true. That does happen. So then he's like, no, I spent my time at your house. I was there that night. Well, yeah, but you didn't get there till after dinner. You didn't and then you left before breakfast. Like, that's not quality time with your children or your family. Yeah. And so that very much happens in every single family. And then you get these two wives that, like in my particular family, you get these two wives that my dad wouldn't even put both of his favorite wives in the fourplex. One had to live somewhere else and the other because there was just no way they could live on the same property together. Wow. And so then, yeah, you're always vying for some time. It's interesting. So that finally was what broke my mom, was this just kept happening over and over and over again. And I'm like, I don't know why you guys decided to move yourselves all together on one little compound. It's like you guys started polygamy all over again and learning from scratch on how to even live by each other.
Did your dad get angry like Cody?
Yeah.
He did?
I think my dad, Cody is a very typical polygamous man when he's mad. Very typical. And my dad's very much that way too. My dad can be very aggressive.
Righteous anger.
Yeah, we don't call it abuse. We call it unrighteous dominion. We don't call it, it's called righteous anger. And then what was the other one? There's another one that we just talked about today. And so, yeah, they like to rename these so that they sound much calmer and milder than they actually are. Yeah. So, but it's abuse. It's straight up abuse. The first time I did my podcast, so many people were like, oh my gosh. And then my dad listened to one and he called me up and he was really upset about it. And he was like, I didn't abuse you growing up. And I'm like, yeah, you did. And I didn't always talk back to my dad. The first time I stood up to my dad, I was 26 years old. And it was when he told Cory that he couldn't date me. And I was like, that I was just going to marry a man that could take care of me and my 3 children. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And that was the first time I ever stood up to my dad. And so I'm talking to my dad on the phone one day and Cory comes walking in like, who are you talking to? And I'm telling my dad, you did abuse us. And he was like, no, I didn't. That was just corporal punishment. I wasn't trying to be abusive. Yet, Dad, I mean, I'm 3 and you are beating me till I pass out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's abuse. So
yeah, Dad, that's not righteous. Okay.
No, there's nothing about, and he just believed in corporal punishment, and that's what he called it. And so, no, it's very much a very abusive society. And I think they just tried to put lipstick on a pig is what they tried to do with sister wives. So. Yeah.
Yeah, we grew up on a compound where you didn't call DFS or whatever. DCFS because it was just normal abuse.
It was not normal abuse.
If they had shown up, you probably would have had kids taken away. So
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love your story. I do want to talk again. This was so amazing. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Oh,
Yeah, really.
course.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are open. We're pretty. If you guys
Yeah.
wanted to get together and talk more about sister wives, I know we
wives.
really didn't cover that much, and because you had mentioned you might want to talk on 2 different platforms, but yeah, we're pretty open in the evenings anytime.
Okay.
And so sorry, Monday was just a rough day for us.
I'm sad. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, no problem at all. And if it's no pressure, but if you want us to join a live, we'd be happy to do that to help your channel also. Happy to
Yeah.
That would be
however we
awesome.
can.
Yeah, that would be amazing because we're not at the point where we feel comfortable interviewing yet because we're like not at the point where I feel like we're just still learning to even talk on camera. I mean, we didn't expect everything to go as fast as it did, and we were just using our iPhone, just sitting there one night. I mean, we're almost empty nesters, and so we have a lot of time on our hands right now, which makes it kind of nice. But yeah, we're just sitting at home one night and I was like, hey, do you want to go live on TikTok? And he was like, no, are you dumb? And so we did it. And then, yeah, we had like almost 700 people on that live, and it just kind of, then we just started doing it from there. And then, so now we've like learned to invest in some equipment, trying to figure out like how to move forward with it. So I think it just kind of took off a little faster than we are prepared to do. And we still have our day jobs. So
Yeah.
Well, I think, I feel like it's refreshing because I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sister Wives. I'm season to season. I thought I could be a sister wife at one point when they were having so much fun early on. And I mean, I would have been the fun wife. I wouldn't have done all the laundry or anything like that. But I just feel like people probably have so many questions, especially since you grew up with the Browns. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So I bet you'll get a lot of people. They were saying they used to have a locker next to Christine, and Christine was like the life of the party.
Was she?
Yeah. And like awesome all the way. And Janelle was awesome, right? Because she's awesome in real life.
Janelle's the one we did not know.
Yeah.
I never saw Janelle or knew her until Cody showed up at church the very first time with her. And I mean, I knew Adam, who she was married to, Mary's brother. And so I was friends with Adam, but I didn't know he had married Janelle or anything like that. And then Cody shows up at church with a second wife. And I remember the day they walked in and I was like, oh, I guess Cody got another wife. No one even really knew that he had gotten her. And so I've only met Janelle a few times. I really just did not know her that well, but yeah, other than that, the other ones we did, but yeah.
Well, and I knew Christine and her family. We play volleyball. They'd invite us over to play volleyball at their place all the time. And I was friends with her older brother. And then I was friends with Robyn's older brother, knew of them. And then when they married into his dad, Paul, then, well, I knew that family, they were all in the same trailer court that we had grown up in.
Yeah.
And so, but by the time I'm a young adult, Paul had moved them down here to southern Utah or something. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I was leaving, I guess she was going back up to Montana and creating havoc up there. So, so I knew Robyn when she was little. I knew her mom. Knew her mom. Loved Christine. She was hilarious, but I never knew Mary growing up. Never knew Janelle. I never knew Cody. Yeah. She was more friends with Cody and Mary and those guys. So
yeah.
We definitely we need to do another one.
Okay.
Thank you really for making the time.
Yeah,
so
of course. Yeah. Anytime.
All right. Good luck with your channel and keep us.
Okay.
We'll like and subscribe.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Sweet.